Yeah, thanks. Cool. So, as has already been said, hi, my name is Leena, and just a quick introduction, even though it's in the leaflet, I'm a third year computer science student in Aberystwyth. As you can probably tell, I'm from Wales, and I have been spending some time looking at languages and also looking at how those translate into sort of more technological aspects and technological revolution. So, the idea of how this came about was that so in my first year, I lived in Welsh-speaking only halls, and most of my friends were studying things like history, like Welsh, but I was studying maths and computer science, and I got an Amazon Alexa for my birthday. And one of my friends went, "Oh, Leena, don't worry, as long as we all speak Welsh, no one, Alexa can't listen to us, Amazon can't listen to us, whatever." And I was going, yeah, okay, yeah, I can believe that. But then I started thinking, it's a matter of time before, before we really open it up to the different languages that, these devices get more and more influenced by the languages. So I was going, well, how long will it actually take for this to happen so that we can have most languages in the world used on our, home devices and things like that? And my language of Welsh is an even weirder language because it's got different dialects, and dialects are interesting to translate when it comes to technology. We don't always think about, different dialects, but it is something that is weird in application. The other influence I had was a book I read a few years back, and it's called Indianola. It's in Welsh. I don't know if it's ever been translated into English, and it translates to The Last Day. And the premise of the book is it's the diary of a 16-year-old, I think he was at the time, a kid called Mark. And he basically is in this dystopian society, and the people in this society, it's a bit 1984 style, people in this society are slowly being turned into robots. And they're slowly making this transition, and it's him recounting the fact that because he's writing in Welsh, the robots can't get to him, they can't understand him, until you get to the end of the book and you realise that he's been converted too, and he starts spouting gibberish, which is the way in the book that you realise that people have been turned into robots. So a bit of backstory on the writer, because it is a little bit relevant to the talk. It's a guy called Owen, the guy who's pictured down there. And he was a nuclear scientist in the 50s, so he grew up in North Wales in a place called Kelly. He went to university in Bangor, he then went into nuclear science, then became a lecturer in Bangor and Aberystwyth. So he was a scientist, but he was also a linguist. He was a big proponent of the Welsh language. He was the founder of Tafod y Draig, which was like a magazine about, Welsh language matters, and a very instrumental founder of what is today known as Cymdeithas yr Iaith Gymraeg, so the Welsh Language Society, who you might see on the news for painting things, stickering things, and being a little bit revolutionary and a little bit out there, but it's to get the point across that we want our language to be valued. He also developed the idea of Ifro Gymraeg, so the areas of Wales that were very Welsh-speaking, and was a first prophet, as Emyr Llywelyn, who wrote the Tafod y Draig, once said, first prophet of the language awakening in Wales. I like to think of Owen as someone who was ahead of his time, and he once came out with this quote here, which I've written down because it's long to say, but he basically started contemplating the role that computers would play in the development of the human race. And he said that we would turn, as humans in the education system, just to paraphrase, we turn from humans in the education system not just being people who are remembering information, but people who could use that information because the computers would then be the memory. So that got me thinking, and the idea of humans becoming fact finders rather than just storage methods for information. And that would really change the way that, education was run. And this is, he said this back in the 70s, actually, 76, about the time he wrote the book. So I think it was quite a prophecy sort of style as to how we run things now. So, yeah, so then, I got to university and I felt cool and started listening to music, and I do a lot of work with the Welsh language music industry. And this album came out by a singer who's originally from here in Cardiff, Gweno, and she wrote this album called Indianola, based around this book that Owen had written. And it got me thinking once again about the language and about technology. So here are some lyrics out of the album that I've translated. And it's sort of this idea that machines collect data and estimate things and would change our fate within the century. And I loved this idea. So I thought, okay, well, how long is it before machines can start understanding, Welsh or other languages? Sometimes what are considered iaith lleiafrifol, so minority languages. How long will that take until, we do have to start worrying about the security of what we're saying in our homes? Bit of a weird one. So I continued. So in terms of people who speak the Welsh language, there are two facts to consider here. So coming back to the idea of ifro Gymraeg, that's what's on the left side here, the areas of Wales that are more Welsh speaking. So I live here in Aberystwyth, but I learnt Welsh up here. So my Welsh is quite northern. But I ran into friends from university, and that's the second map of the dialects in Wales. And people go, oh, all Welsh sounds the same, or Northerners hate the Southerners, or anything like that. But actually, there's quite a few dialects. In fact, there's 5 dialects, 4 of which are in Wales, and 1 of which is in Argentina. So the language, your expression is correct. The language has evolved, and the way that the dialect has changed is a very interesting way to consider when you're writing anything to do with technology, because it's not just a case of recognizing a word, because the word can change from dialect to dialect, as can the sentence structure, so it's a question of semantics. So in terms of implementing, a language recognition on an Amazon Alexa or on a Google Home, it's quite a tough problem. So those were the 2 sides of the problem that I was looking to consider. And there is a bit of competitiveness over the dialects, which, doesn't help. So coming to the idea of home devices, the first one that I looked at was the Google Home, which hit the news, has been hitting the news for a few years, and how many languages it supports. So, it supports quite a few languages, but even within the languages, it supports different dialects. For example, for French, which I have used on the Google Home, I'm also a French speaker, you can speak the Quebecois dialect to Google Home, and it will figure out what you're saying, even though the words are different. So I was thinking, how does it do that? And actually, when I looked into it, it was a very complex set of, it had been trained through neural networks, and it was basically taking a word and associating it to another word. So this is all the things that Google Home has, all the languages that it's implemented. And there's quite a good spread, but, there's really not that many when you think about it. I know that my dad got a Google Home, and he's from Lebanon, and he started yelling in Arabic, and I don't even want to explain what came out of the Google Home because it was just a bit confused. So then we move on to the other big player in the game, so the Alexa. I have an Echo Dot, and she was endlessly confused when I was asking her to play Welsh music. I'm not even going to tell you what she was trying to play at me. But yeah, 7 languages in total, again, a range of different dialects, and Amazon have been trying to implement even more languages on here, but they're a bit behind schedule. So these were the languages as of 2018, and they've set some goals for 2019, but they're about less than halfway to those goals of implementing the other languages. So it's a bit of a slow game in terms of trying to make it more accessible to other people. So this brings me on to the idea of machine translation. So I was like, okay, well, if I want to look at the aspect of security, well, I've got to try and implement this myself first. So machine translation obviously deals with semantics, deals with morphological differences, grammatical complexities. Some languages are a lot more grammatical than others. You look at languages like French and even Welsh versus English. I remember when I was learning English, I had no idea what was right until someone went, it's fine, it just sounds right. Whatever that meant to me as a learner. So I put some examples up of Welsh phrases that have differences between the dialects, just to give you an example of the fact that you have difference in phrase, difference in pronunciation, and sometimes difference in words. So a simple thing like asking for a cup of tea, and I remember this meeting one of my closest friends, who's from South Wales. He asked me for the first time, he's like, dych chi moyn disgled? I was like, what does that mean? I'd never heard that before, and that's in the same country, maybe about 3 hours drive in between and you've got a completely different sentence. So that's the first thing, you've got the difference in vocabulary. So panad and dishgled, they mean tea, both of them. They sound completely different, but they mean tea. And then you've got milk is the other one. So the ongoing issue of llai versus llefrith. I would say llefrith, my friend would say llai. And there is sort of like a cut-off line they've tried to map as to how the language has changed. But trying to implement this on an Alexa took time because it was a case of connecting those words together and trying to think of all of the different dialects and all of the different words they use. This is only north and south. Like I said, there are 5 different dialects. Sometimes you can get 5 different words for the same thing. And they're not synonyms because different people would use them in different sentence constructions. And the other ones, the other idea is the fact that some phrases are pronounced mildly differently. So, for example, to say sorry, in North Wales you say my drw geni, but in the south you say my drw davi or davi. So it's slightly different. If you've got, a device, it can sort of slip up a bit. So that was what I looked at, what I had to take into account. And I spent time talking to many different people about this topic, including my university lecturers. And they were a bit confused as to why it hadn't been done before and why I was taking so much time and being so nitpicky. But in terms of the security argument, I argued that, a bit like in the book Indianola, the whole idea was that the character Mark was writing in Welsh so that the machines wouldn't understand him. And I really wanted to know how long it would be before languages like Welsh would be understood by home devices. So I tried it myself. Okay, so the method that I used. So I went for a sort of standard encoder and decoder architecture for the actual neural network that I tried to implement. And I had some very interesting math, and it didn't fit on the slide, so I decided to put videos instead. And the idea is that you have a source sentence, so like the little phrases that I was saying, because you wouldn't really say a lot, you wouldn't have a long chat with a home device. So that was something I took into account. It's usually, Alexa, can you play this song? Alexa, can you set a timer? Can you order some shopping? It's usually a set sentence that people say, but it doesn't have to be a set sentence. It's just not going to be a very long chat. I don't know how you are with your home devices. If you have home devices, I don't tend to chat to mine for that long. So the idea is that you have a source sentence with a sentence construction that you know. So you know where a verb could be, you know where a noun could be, you know if there's a descriptive adjective, you know where those would be in the sentence approximately, because grammatically, even in English and in many other languages, the idea of sentence construction is about the same no matter what sentence you're saying. So you have a slight idea, which works to an extent, and you push it through the targets. So you push it through with a range of vector values, basically, to be able to tell so you analyze it word by word, what each word is saying, what that word could mean, and then you put it back together through, like I've put here with the W, X, Y, Z. You put it back together and you've got a sort of machine view of what the instruction is that you've asked this machine to do. So you say something, it gets translated into a way that the machine can understand it, and then it goes off and does something. So usually in the home devices, the more I looked into this, the more I realized that the reason that a lot of the languages hadn't been properly implemented was that you could say something, for example, to an Amazon Alexa in French, and it would take the French sentence and it would translate it first into English, proceed and do the action in English, and if there was an answer required by the machine, it would translate it back into French and give you the answer, because obviously you're assuming that the speaker speaks French. So saying that these machines are understanding us is a little bit false, because what they're doing is they're translating what you've told them to do, doing something, and then translating it back and, if there's an answer to give, doing it. So I kept tinkering with this, and I went, okay, well, I got it to go from Welsh to English back into Welsh if it had to give me an answer. The bit that I then tried to test was within all of this scheme of Welsh dialects and stuff like that, there was a failed attempt in the 80s to implement a standardized Welsh language, so Cymraeg byw, living Welsh. And the idea was it would be taught in schools, it would standardize the language, people would speak it it just never took off. It just didn't work because there was so much regionalization of the language that had taken place over years and years and years that it didn't catch on. No one really understood this new Cymraeg. So it still exists. There's still books in it. And people can understand what it's saying, but no one would really speak in that way. So I went, okay, well, if there's a standard version of Welsh, a bit like we kind of have a standard version of English, what if I used that and just passed it into Cymraeg byw, instead of translating it into English, so that at no point in the process of translation, ordering and stuff like that, at no point would I have to use English in my Alexa. I thought that would be a really interesting idea, and there had been some previous research done in Swedish, so the way that Swedish dialects worked. So I've been starting on that, so I thought that just to demonstrate how far I got, I had a little video of me trying to talk to my Alexa, which I hope will play. Alexa, Dad. Oh dear. I know it's a bit loud upstairs. I'm sorry, but if you can hear... Alexa, gai fratolesian pysbi fel bueno mar Spotify? So I asked it to play this song, fratolesian pysbi, which is here, and you can, if you come and see me later, you can give it a listen. So I've gotten it to play things to a decent amount of accuracy, so the system works, which is great. So just in conclusion, this is an ongoing project. I'm definitely nowhere close to done, and I'm always finding things to play around with. But I thought that the security implications of this issue were quite interesting, because this all started off with people going, well, how long will it be until all these machines understand all of these languages? So I found this really cool picture of a language tree, and it shows you what the different kinds of languages are, and the roots they come from, and the links they have, because really that is something that we could implement within our sort of network approach to vocabulary when we're implementing it in, home devices and stuff like that. So in terms of my study, I'm way down here in the Celtic languages. So I have toyed with the idea of expanding my work to other things, like I'm learning Cornish. I know. Learn a language where you can talk to people is what my mum said. But I'm learning Cornish, and there's actually a lot of common roots there. So I was thinking, well, why wouldn't I extend the idea to other pro-Brythonic languages, where instead of having a network of just the words in Welsh, you could have them in different languages and just sort of build it on like that and keep tacking it on for any one word. With the idea being that eventually I could speak to my Alexa in any of the languages and she would just understand what I was saying, because it would just be one word with one meaning, which then you'd have different words with that same meaning. And just sort of building up that network. Now, I know it takes time, but I'm 21 and I have ages. So what is the point of having... So another thing my friend asked me, what's the point of having more languages? I mean, why can't everyone just speak English? Or French, or Arabic, or Mandarin, or any other thing? Why do you want to work on languages? So for me, speaking Welsh is a big part of who I am, and working in Wales is a big part of who I am, but I'm also a computer scientist, so I like to play around with things. So it's not just to do it as an experiment and give me extra challenges within the dialects and stuff like that, but the point is also to make technology more universally used. So I was up seeing a friend in North Wales with his grandmother, and I was showing her my Alexa. Now, she speaks very little English. She's always lived in this village, Trawsfynydd in North Wales, speaks very little English, and she was really trying. But when I was talking to her about, this, she thought it was so cool. She was like, oh my God, I can speak to a computer in my language. And it was that little thought that, motivated me. I was like, okay, I've got to keep trying at this project, even though I wasn't doing so well at the time. Got to keep trying. So that was the point. But there's also a security aspect, I think, also. So in having more languages, you're also opening yourself up to more problems. I mean, like we saw in the keynote talk, there is the idea of the more open you become, the more security breaches you could have. And I think it invites us into weird and wonderful ways of solving problems. So that leads me on to the next point. If we keep opening up, we are eventually going to modernise the language. So another phrase I get when I'm outside of Wales is, why are you learning a dead language? It's very hurtful, but you get that. So how can this modernise the language? So like I said, it'll make it more used and that sort of thing. But we also have this scheme in Wales, so Cymraeg 2050, we want to get 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. And whether we do that or not is neither here nor there for this project. But it's about making the language modern and more used. And if you have the opportunity in the house to speak it, or in the office, you know, there are a lot of people using home devices in the office to speak the language, I think that is more important, and sort of building that up and building people's confidence up. I've met a lot of people who come up to me and go, wow, I've been learning Welsh and I can write it. I don't have the confidence to speak, and I think that that would really build that up, not just for the Welsh language, but for other languages. I know that I've got friends learning Mandarin who haven't been to China yet, and they just go, well, I don't have the confidence to speak Mandarin, but I can write it fine. And it's that idea of building up, you know, there's a lot of richness to be had in those languages. If we build it up by, you know, using technology, that is an upside. And last but not least, again, the security implications. Well, adding anything to a system has security implications. And I had one of my lecturers turn to me and go, oh, well, have you, you know, if you're overwriting certain parts of the system for the Alexa, so like I said, I was using Cymraeg Byw, well, have you considered what that will do to the Alexa? You know, have you hooked up, be careful you haven't hooked up your credit card, but be careful, you know, anyone could order anything in your house. And it's a case of implementing more things on top. So because I've been overwriting the original system, I've not been using an API, I was originally, and then I just started from scratch and started overwriting it. There was the idea of setting my own types of security. So I've actually, whenever I want to order my shopping, I've got like a little password thing that I say. It's a couple of poem lyrics, poem phrases, I don't know what they're called, lines from a poem that I say, and the Alexa will know it's me. So you can play around with it a little bit and have some fun. So yeah, that was my talk. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. We have time for questions. No?
I have one.
Yes.
I don't need the microphone.
Okay. Just yell.
Have you played with Minecraft?
Have I played with? Minecraft. Yeah.
Mycroft.
Yeah.
Where does he start? Language.
They is in the I forget which company it is, but
It's called Minecraft project.
yeah.
It's Mozilla. It's Mozilla Foundation. Yeah.
Sorry?
Mycroft. It's Mozilla Foundation.
Yeah, it's Mozilla. I couldn't remember who bought it over. That was what I was. Yeah, so I have played, and actually I've played it in Welsh, and I've played it in Cornish to practice my Cornish.
No, we're not talking about Minecraft.
Yeah.
We're talking about Mycroft.
Yeah, sorry, no, yeah, Minecraft, like played with the, not played, sorry, not the game. I wish it was.
Not the game.
That would have been great. Incidentally, it does have both languages. I think it has both languages. But yeah, no, I say play, like I've had a look into it. It stacks up pretty well. The only issue is in terms of, and this is only a niche issue in terms of Welsh, it's only accounting for 2 of the dialects. When you give it a go, it only accounts for the northern and southern, whereas there's a few others which it hasn't yet accounted for. But I think that's based on the fact that the differences between northern and southern are easier to take into account. The differences between the others are more pronunciation and intonation. So it's more of a niche problem which hasn't really been explored yet.
I also think that grade 8 is crazy for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's different sort of categories of the dialect, so there is a case of broadening it out. But I know that you can do it within the engine. I just don't think it's been done yet. Oh no.
Hello, I got a question. Are you aware of any Welsh leet-speak brute-forcing dictionaries that are out there yet?
I can't hear you.
Are you aware of any Welsh-based leet-speak brute-force dictionaries out there at the moment? I'll come up.
I'm really sorry. It's because of the feedback.
Are you aware of any Welsh leet-speak hacking or brute-force dictionaries out there?
Not really. No, I'm not aware of any.
No?
No.
We've been looking for some. So
Have you been looking for some?
Yeah.
I haven't started looking for some, but it was actually when I was showing this to my friend yesterday. I was like, "Have you considered this?" And I haven't. Like I said, it's early days, but yeah, I need to have a better look into it. The thing is, with Welsh, the infrastructure is not really out there, so it's about sort of tinkering with it. And a lot of the issue is also with a lot of Welsh speakers, not many of them are in tech, so not many of them think of this. It's not something that's really thought about. And the tech community, conversely, don't really think of it. So it's bridging the two and juggling the two. Yeah. Sorry, it's just because there's a lot of feedback from upstairs. Yeah. Cool. Oh, no problem. Anyone else?
Anybody else? No?
thank you.
Thank you.